Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our weekly local discovery session for IWDST. This is session number 22, and today is Thursday, July 11th. So we will start in with the project updates for you all, and then we will dive right into today's working session. So Al, do you want to give us a quick update on the project status?
You bet. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We are just finishing up a sprint today, which is, I believe, 10, if I remember right. And then we'll be starting one tomorrow. Currently, when I say finishing up a sprint, currently in development, that would be milestone E, which is a service templates and collection work, and milestone K, which is in relationship management. We're getting very, 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 very close to getting this out to UAT area and getting you guys in it. I know we've been talking about that, but we wanted to finish up the relationship management, the relationship part of it, building those, and we're close. And we'll probably actually demonstrate all of that again. The relationship part was what we had left to you all next week. Data migration has begun to also, and that's basically building up the code to be able to migrate the data from IWDS over. Obviously, once we get that in place, we'll have some good data in the test area, but we'll also have that ready for down the road when we do that final pushover. So we're going to build that out throughout the year. I'm sure I've kind of said that before, but just wanted you to just see that. We're continuing discovery, requirements gathering, that type of work where we build those user stories and all. We work with you, we work with the state SMEs. We're continuing to do that for customer intake, and you'll see some customer profile today. The application part, which is milestone B, trade adjustment assistance. We did some pre-work on that, and then we put that on hold until we get done with applications and profile. We want to make sure, and services, we want to make sure we take advantage of that. And we're doing these kind of in the order that we can build these out to. Obviously, we want the stories from the requirements into the backlog so that I know those are terms you probably don't know, but we want those teed up into the backlog so that we can plan those into development sprints in an order that makes sense. We can't build, the cart before the horse concept. Entity management, we're still working on trying to define the actual training program part. I'm working with the team on that at the state, and we are close, I believe, on pre-screening. I know there's a couple of items left yet for that pre-screening that I showed you. Hopefully we get that cleared out, the pre-screening part anyway, and so that we can get that into development. And then federal reporting has started up. As you know, that we got into reporting discussions last week, and then we're continuing on doing the crosswalk of all the elements that are in the standard current reports, and we're making sure that we can come back and present that to you in a more orderly fashion, and in a sense that says, okay, these different reports are similar. What can we do maybe to merge and combine those, but give you more querying capabilities and those kinds of things? We definitely want to enhance the whole reporting aspect of the system in 2.0. So that's where we are on that. There's the sprint updates there. Yeah, we will end 10 today. And then I also popped in here the story points just to kind of give you an idea. We probably average about 2.5 points, if you want to know the average per story. But these are the stories actually. We have identified 458, which definitely just basically means, okay, from our requirements documents, we've peeled out, dissected, and created 458 stories. This also includes GMS, the grant monitoring system, since grant monitoring went into production, not the first cut, but since it went into production. And there's probably a quarter of those stories are from grant monitoring. That will probably level off soon. The whole concept here is, of the identified ones, there were 367 of them that are completely defined. And of that, 458. Also, there are 264 stories that we've completely developed. So as you can see, that identified number will continue as we discover, do the requirements documents, and then push those into stories, which are smaller, obviously. You'll see that climb throughout the year, throughout the next 12 months. Hopefully, maybe like in 9 months, that'll stabilize and you won't see that climb much more. Eventually, all the stories defined will meet up and with those identified. And then developed will eventually, when we get through the UAT part and then we get through the acceptance and all that, you'll see that grow up to the identified also. So it's kind of something that you'll notice as we go along. We're probably going to be in the definitely 4 digits on stories very soon. So to give you an idea of that. Okay. And that is all we have on status. And then we're going to turn it over to Taylor. She has some really cool user customer profile mock-ups. And just to preface this for her a little bit, these are in mock-up stage. So it's really great that we can get feedback from you before we start really busting out the requirements. The state SME group saw these yesterday for the first time. And you'll see these for the first time today with what the plan is. And I think you're going to really enjoy looking at them. Taylor?
All right. Thank you, Al. So if you guys can remember way back in April, Olivia went over the first view of the customer menu. And this is the old version of that mock-up that she kind of did a brief high-level overview on. So what we're going to review today is the updated version of this to get your initial feedback. So this would be the customer profile. So if you remember from IWDS 2.0, when we did that brief overview with you guys, whenever you have a customer in your list or the application list, doesn't matter which, these last names will be hyperlinked. And when you click on the last name, it's going to take you to that customer menu. So we're going to pretend like we clicked on Amy Hare here, and it's going to pop us over to the customer status would actually be the first piece that it would land on, but that's going to be something we'll talk about a different day. That's not mocked up yet, not ready to go, but we're on the second tab here, which is the customer profile. So this is where you're going to see all this information about the customer and be able to edit things as needed, be able to look at applications, look at services, things like that. So I want you guys to use your imagination for a moment here. So pretend like the gray bar at the top here with the customer's name, Amy Hare, and this column on the left-hand side in gray are locked in place. So that means that when we're scrolling through and looking at things, the only thing that's really going to be moving is this piece on the right-hand side. That way, if you're all the way down here looking at something, you're still going to be able to see the customer's name, and you're going to have these navigation tools. So the navigation tools are on the left-hand side. You're going to have a button that'll take you back to the customer list if you want to go back and look for a different customer. And then you'll have navigation for the specific screen up at the top. So you'll see over here, we've got 3 main items that are on the customer profile. We've got customer information, application summary, and profile information. So if we're all the way down looking at something and we wanted to hop back up to the top of the screen, we could just, click customer information and it will pull you right back up here. So you don't have to do a bunch of scrolling back and forth. You can just easily click to navigate between the different areas of this page. And then we have what are called participant summary tools. So these are going to be kind of like your quick links for items within IWDS 2.0. And do note that if there's something that needs to be changed or updated on here, that's what the kind of feedback we're looking for today. So right now, those quick links we have for individuals would be assessments, case notes, generate swipe card, and we're going to have a conversation with this later down the line on, do we need a swipe card? Is it going to end up being like a QR code? So just note that more info to come on that. And then we've got that referrals piece, resumes, your self-service and information only services, and uploads. We wanted to have this quick link tools section over here available for pretty much anybody that comes into the system. So if your front desk staff is the one, for example, that might be uploading timesheets for a customer, they don't need to know where to navigate into the career plan or something to upload those. They could just click the uploads link here, upload what they need to. There would be specific things that they would fill out to make sure it goes to the right piece of the system, and then they can just save and be done with it. Same with like self-service and information only services. If you have customers that are not part of an application, but they are just, those self-service customers, they're coming in to use the resource room, they're coming in to get maybe help with a resume, use the printer, things like that. That's where you'll go to access all of those self-service and information only services. And then, of course, we've got the referrals. So if we're going to refer a customer somewhere, you could go to that referral piece. Case notes will be a really easy place for you to go and view and add case notes. Now, case notes will be something, and same with uploads. They're going to be everywhere in the system, depending on where you're at. So if you're deep in the career plan and you need to add a case note, you'll be able to do it from there. You're not going to have to navigate here, but this is just that quick link if you need to access it without digging through the system. And then assessments, if you need to view or update or add any assessments, that's a quick link there. Does anybody have any thoughts on like what we have here listed for those quick links? Is there anything that you think should be added here? Do note that at the top here, we do have these tabs that take you to different pages. Career tools is where that whole career plan is going to live. So you have your whole separate page for the career plan. And then intake and exits and outcomes. Christy, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just have a question. Is one of those tabs or one of those links on the side can we click on there to see like the services that they've entered that are part of their like WIOA application, or does that mean the self services? Is that or
so you'll see it right down here. Yep, we haven't you were going ahead of me. So yeah,
okay,
and then,
thank you.
Yes, of course. Other questions, comments about anything that might need to be updated or added for like a quick link for you guys? You guys are the ones that are really in the system and using it day to day. So we want to make sure that we have everything that you think you're going to need, or your career planners are going to need, or even your front desk staff or whoever is entering info for you is going to need. Okay. So we will start going over each of these categories within the customer profile. So customer information, application summary, and the profile information. So the first piece here is customer information. Do note that some of this might change or update depending on what is going on in the system. But the first thing here is just kind of your general information. We wanted to put this up at the top so that it's quick and easy for you to access. And this is just going to have that standard information about a customer. So they would have the option to put in a preferred name. We will have a way to do pronouns. We'll have some additional conversation about how this question might be worded, where it's going to be listed, if it should be listed on the application, things like that. But if they do identify pronouns, they would be listed here for you as well. And then your date of birth, phone number, email address. These are all pieces that kind of come from that create customer record. So if you remember from us demoing the customer and application menus, if we're adding a new customer to the system, let's just put in something random. And we're on that create customer record, they are required to put in their first name, last name, email address, date of birth, race, Hispanic or Latino, zip code, gender at birth, disability, and veteran status. Everything that a customer enters on this page, if they do decide to share a phone number, that would be here as well. If they do answer that question on accommodations, anything that is filled out here on the create customer record will be auto-populated onto their customer profile. So when you come in here for the first time, you're already going to have the customer's name, their date of birth, their email. The address will only show zip code right now if that's the first time we've came in here. But you will have the option to edit the customer information, and then this will also pull from the application. So essentially you don't have to fill out any additional information on the customer profile. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. But if let's say you never get the full address, they decide to start an application, and then you collect the full address when they're doing their WIOA application, it would pull from the application and populate here. So it kind of gives you that flexibility. If the customer gives you the information now before they've even started an application, you could go ahead and pop it into their customer menu. And then anything that is filled out here that is required for the application would then populate on the application as well. And then you would just verify that information is correct. So like I said, it gives you that flexibility to kind of enter things in advance if you need to or would like to, but then it also pulls, so it kind of works both ways. If you put it on the customer profile first, it'll pull on the application. If you put it on the application first, it'll pull to the customer profile. The other items over here, we do have that unique identifier. We have to have additional conversations about what this unique identifier is going to look like. Will we need a unique identifier? This is a conversation surrounding the social security number. I believe we have that teed up to kind of talk to the state about next week. So this is here as kind of a placeholder. It may update or be removed depending on if we think we need it. We do have that Illinois workNet ID as well. That would be auto-populated as customers are added into IWDS 2.0. They would get an Illinois workNet account auto-generated for them. So that would pull from that auto-generated account. And then that LUIA that they are a part of would be auto-populated as well. And like I said, you do have the option to edit any of this information. So if you pop this up, anything that should be editable would be like their preferred name, pronouns, phone number, email address, street address. So if a customer comes to you and lets you know, like, hey, I got a new phone number, you can easily just come into the profile and update their phone number here. And like I said, we just wanted to have this nice and at the top for you all. That way it's quick access if you need to get any of this contact info for that customer. Any questions about customer info before we talk about the application summary?
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
You just mentioned that if you that there might be some items on here that don't appear at first, and then if they were to fill out an application, for example, it might update their address. So application dumps into this, but customer information, this doesn't dump into a locked application, right? So if they
Correct. Yeah. If an application is already certified, nothing will change on the application.
Okay.
But if they already have this information filled out and they click to start a new application, a brand new one, then it would auto-populate that information. And then there would be something on there for the career planner to like nudge them to say, hey, is this info still correct?
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, definitely that's how it works in IWDS right now as well. If you're on the customer menu, you could make changes, but it won't make any changes to that certified app. So yeah, that's exactly how we'll have it work here too.
Okay.
We don't want to mess anything up. Yeah,
Right.
Go ahead.
I have a question before we move on. So you had clicked the edit button. I didn't see on there the date of birth. Did I miss that?
So date of birth, actually, that's a question that I wanted to bring up. Would it make more sense to have date of birth up here, or would it make more sense to have date of birth under your private information? Because right now I have it in both, but we need to figure out which makes the most sense.
Well, I was just thinking sometimes, when a customer comes in and we're creating a customer profile, they may be in there, but for whatever reason, the date of birth got entered incorrectly or something like that. And so we're needing to kind of just update that and correct that. It doesn't happen very often, but I have seen it a few times here or there. I don't know if other OEs have experienced that as well. But as far as where it's located, I think I would like to be able to, I understand, to update that at the customer information. That's just
so then we can definitely keep it here, and then this would just be updated and we'll include date of birth. Right now, like I said, I had it in both places, and when we get to private info, you could see it here, but we'll just remove it from private info and we'll pop it up.
So the private information would be able to be editable as well, as what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. I think under private is fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So whichever place you think makes the most sense. And it could be viewable in both places and maybe just editable in one, but just depends on what we think makes the most sense with it. But yeah, so when we get to private info, we'll talk a little bit about these items and whether or not it's going to be editable, view only, things like that. And then, yeah, Mark, I see care has to be given to changing a birth date as it might have eligibility implications. I think in this instance, it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about with the application being certified. You know, if the application is certified and the date of birth was wrong on that application, that would have to be a whole process that, you know, you guys, I think, go through now if information entered incorrectly on a certified app. But at this point, if they don't have an application yet and there was just an error on the date of birth when the customer was entered, that could be changed here. So just keep in mind that any information that is changed on the profile will not change a certified application. So even if you make an error on updating something here, it should not change anything in regards to their actual application and eligibility. Sorry, I was yelling at one of my cats. So yeah, and then Rory, I like your thought here. Don't have an issue having it in both places, but like it being viewable up at the top and editable at the bottom. Yeah, I like that suggestion as well. All right, so the next section is application summary. So this is where you're going to see all the applications for a customer and also the services for a customer. So when you pop down to application summary, the first thing you're going to notice here is we kind of have this toggle button. So this way you could toggle between active applications and inactive applications. It would be auto defaulted to active. So the example we have here for Amy Hare, she only has one active application right now. It's a WIOA adult application. And we can see her app date, the name that was on here for her application, the career planner associated with it. But if for some reason you needed to go back and say, I need to go look at an old application for a customer, you could click this inactive. And if they have any applications that they had exited from, then those would populate here instead, and you could see those old applications.
So are those going to be certified applications or just applications that have been started?
That is a good question, and we could definitely look at doing one or the other or both. What do people have thoughts on that for?
So my question is because under IWDS, an applicant is somebody who's been certified. Like the application, in order for it to show as an applicant in our system, they're certified. So I just, for confusion purposes for local areas in the future, if you're going to put any app, even started apps, we don't want them to think it was certified. So maybe if you add another column that says certified, you know, or not certified or something, and at least if you're going to put them both together, that would break it up to help people make sure they're not counting something that got started earlier.
Yeah, okay. Anybody else have any thoughts about that, of maybe having both on the same list, but making sure there's a column that lets you know the status? Yeah, and if they're uncertified, they are still recorded as a reportable individual, so that is something to remember. But we could definitely put that here. So, you know, maybe if you started an application, but it hasn't been certified, maybe they needed to bring in additional documentation or something like that, it could still list here. So you would know like, hey, Amy Hare started this application. This is, you know, the status of it. And then you could still go in to view that application and continue the application from the application menu. Do you guys think that makes sense to do it that way so that you could see any active, no matter if they're certified or not certified yet from this piece?
This is Christy, excuse me, this is Christy with LWIA 7. I think that makes sense. Because I'm just thinking, well, in Career Connect, and I would, I think when you list the person, now see, maybe I'm getting confused. Like if they had another application like 5 years ago, when you pull up the person, you could see it. So you could see like, okay, they were exited, or okay, maybe like you just said, they started something, or then you could see their current application. So is that?
Yes.
what
So
you're
if you
talking
switched
about?
this to inactive, then it would show you anything that has been like exited or maybe it timed out because they never finished it, something like that. But then if you went to the active piece, it would show you all of the certified applications that are currently active. So they're an active participant, or maybe it's an application that they started but hasn't been finished yet, but we know it's like a current application that's been started.
I guess for me, I would feel like I personally would like to see them only because you want to make sure you're choosing the correct application.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion.
Well, and maybe instead of having like where it says applications and you got that toggle there, why don't you have an individual like once they're exited, like in the call or in the row, it says inactive so that we can see all of the old ones, right? So we don't have to toggle back and forth to try to see what they've ever done or what's going on.
Yeah, so
Maybe-
something, let me see here. So this is grayed out, but so something similar to this is the old way that it was built. So you can see here, like we can see 3 applications right here, and we can see active participant for this one, and then you have the exited ones here so that you can see them all in one menu. So that's how we reviewed it with the state yesterday, was this view here. And then we talked about maybe adding that toggle. And the reason for that toggle, and I'll let you guys stew on this for a moment, has to do with the program services. So this application here, this active application for this WIOA adults, these are all the services tied to that application. So the reason why we kind of did that is so that you don't have a bunch of old services showing for all of these applications that are listed here. And we could definitely update that and maybe make it where, now I swear I just saw a
Can't you make
message.
it so when we hit view on an application, that's when it shows us the services versus all the services just be there? Like, can you tie that box, the services?
Yeah, and we could definitely
to-
talk about
and then
maybe
when we
doing,
hit view,
yeah, something similar to that, where maybe it's going to show all the applications here, and then you could just like click something to like show services, so you can just see maybe this is blank until you click on a specific application.
Yeah,
Yeah, so kind of mirroring or like meshing the two ideas together. Yeah, I think that's something we could definitely look at, so that if you have 3 applications here, 2 of them are exited, and we clicked on this one, that it's just going to show these services. But if for some reason you need to go back to, maybe Amy had an application from 2019 and you needed to see something from that, you could click on that application and you could see the services that Amy completed in 2019.
Yeah, I gotta put in my 2 cents and just say that I think the application toggle is unnecessary.
Okay.
I mean, I understand how it's linked there. I understand the benefit of having the program services pop right up, but I'm with Christy and everybody else in saying that I would rather, knowing how we look at things, I would rather see all applications to make sure we're getting the right one and not invite difficulties or somebody forgetting to toggle it to see if there was an old one, and then have the services show up once you choose which one you're looking at.
Okay, yeah, I like that idea. And then do keep in mind that, as we expand IWDS 2.0 and we're including the other programs, so, like JTED, CEJA, FEJA, things like that, those would show here too. So if you do have a customer that's co-enrolled in, like a WIOA adult and JTED, then you would have, 2 active applications right here to show that. And then you could still toggle between the services if needed. And you guys would be okay with this list showing like 4 or 5 applications if it kind of gets longer? That wouldn't be an issue for you all.
No,
As long as it's very clear that they're, exited
Yeah.
or active.
Yeah, because just, you know what, LWS7 has so many people that I can just imagine I'm sure it's going to happen regardless. People just choosing the wrong thing or getting confused or forgetting to turn that toggle switch back and forth. But I like the idea of toggling between the program services, because then you could see, oh, these are the ones that are still open. Like, that's a good idea. I just want to make sure that we're not choosing the wrong application for somebody, or, you know, maybe it's out. I just feel like, it could be data errors or the, you know, cleanup stuff that we could prevent. That's all I'm, you know, saying.
Yeah, so we could almost do it, like switch it. So this would show all of your applications, and then maybe here you have a drop down
Yeah,
that
would
allows
be
you to
cool.
select from their applications. So that if we selected this application, then these services would populate.
I think that's a good idea.
So, I mean, people don't have like 7 or 8 applications. I mean, that is, it's so having too many rows under the applications, that shouldn't be an issue, because, I mean, at the most, what, 2 or 3, maybe other areas have way more than that, but I can't imagine somebody having 5, 6, 7 applications.
Yeah, that is the hope anyway, that would be a very, very rare instance. Even if they're co-enrolled in a couple of, you know, JTED and WIOA, we still hopefully aren't seeing 7 or 8 applications. So yeah, that's kind of what my thought was too. So I think that's a good idea. We'll kind of flip this so you can view all, make sure it's very clear on, you know, the status of those applications, so that you know if it's certified, not certified, active, inactive, those things like that. And then maybe update this to some sort of drop down so that you can select between any of their applications to see the services that are included in that application. And then from there, we would have that add service button. So this is just a quick way for you to be able to add services to a customer. So if you select this WIOA application and it pops these services, so we could see, you know, Amy's completed these services. She has this one that's open. She has this one that's planned, not started. But if for some reason we, you know, not if for some reason, but you're like, oh, hey, we need to add another supportive services for transportation, or we need to add, you know, a childcare supportive service, you could just quickly add it here instead of going deep into the career plan. Do note that when we get to the career plan, there is going to be an expanded services area. We'll be able to tie those services to goals, things like that. But this is just a quick way for you to add services and view them without having to view the whole career plan. So that'll kind of be one of those things that'll be in more than one place, but that way you have that flexibility to see it right here. Any other thoughts about application summary, how we kind of want this to work, things like that?
I see that you have the service names there that look like they're hyperlinked, that I'm assuming will take you to the actual service record. Are the ones that are same-day services still going to function the way they did before, where you just click on the original record and then add an episode instead of using that add service button?
I think that's something that we are going to have to discuss further. There has been conversations about possibly getting rid of episodes, but that will be something that we will do discovery on in more detail when we actually get to the services piece within the career plan. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer right now, but we will have an answer later down the line when we get to that piece in more detail on whether or not we'll do episodes, or if you'll have to add a new service for the same day service. Before we move on, does anybody have any thoughts about that? Just because I know that's something that I will be covering when we get to the career plan, pros and cons on episodes. What do we think about them? Do we like them? Do we want to get rid of them?
Well, Career Connect doesn't use the episodes, so sometimes people have like 22 services because we have to enter one for each time.
Yeah, if
which
they
is
have
how-
multiple like transportation,
Yeah,
same day services.
yeah, so in some ways, like I know how the episodes work in IWDS, which is fine, but like if I'm looking in IWDS for somebody, like for if we had another LWIA transfer, you can't tell how many times they actually received it. So it's good and bad. But like,
Agreed.
yeah, it makes the service list extremely long if you're entering each time, but I know why they do the episodes too. So I'm not, maybe if there's a way, you could just click on like you click on the transportation, maybe you could see all the times that they got it, but it just is listed one time. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
a
yeah.
good,
Hard to
Yeah.
distinguish how many, when did they get it?
yeah, that's a good point because in IWDS currently, I mean, the episodes was a good function in terms of making sure that everything under one type of service is in the same place and that you're just adding, and so it does keep the service list more manageable. But at the same time, even if you're the person managing it, not to mention a different LWA, you can't go back in. Like if you made a data entry mistake in terms of the time frame, you can't fix it because you can't get to the one that was the mistaken. You can't see it anywhere, you know?
And then
It just
same
has the
with that,
opening.
isn't it? If you had like several episodes under one and you deleted this, it would delete all those episodes. I think that
That's
was another concern.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so I definitely think that if we do decide to move forward with episodes, definitely doing some work on updating it so that, like you said, if you clicked on this, maybe you can see, like, here's all, there's 6 episodes for transportation, and then there's a button that says, like, do you want to add another episode? And then those episodes could be linked as well, so then you could edit an episode.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
found that
sounds-
confusing as well when I was playing with IWDS. So definitely when we get to that career plan, we'll do some more
Mhm.
digging into episodes. And if we keep them, definitely make them more user friendly and make them make sense.
Yeah, that idea sounds good, where you can just see what you did, even if it's just listed one time.
Yeah, so like on this view, if we went that route, it would be that one time and you would see probably the most the most recent episode here. But if you clicked on this, you could see, oh, Amy had an episode in January, an episode in December, an episode in, maybe she was getting transportation once a month. Something like that. Yeah, I'll definitely make some notes of that about episodes. And then when we get to that career plan, we'll have a deeper dive discussion about that. And should we keep them? And if so, how would we update them to make sense?
Well, yeah, and I think part of that discussion, speaking as somebody who's around when transportation, as an example, was just an open record, it wasn't a same-day service, and you opened it and then you entered case notes every time somebody came in and they brought in their mileage or whatever. And then they changed it so that it was a same-day service in an effort to make sure that we were all recording when we actually provided services to a person in an accurate fashion. So whether it was an update to an IEP or transportation or whatever, but it's like it didn't go far enough in allowing you to be able to fix problems, or you know what I mean? I mean, it was good and bad at the same time, like we've already said.
Yeah, no, that's all really good feedback, and I've made some notes about it. So we'll circle back around to it when we get to that conversation. But I'm glad we had that discussion now, because episodes has been brought up a couple of times as I've been going through services, and we definitely will need to make that decision. All right, other thoughts or questions about application before we move down to this profile info? All right, so profile information, we have 3 areas here. There's going to be private information, veterans information, and additional contacts. So one thing to note is that these fields that are here are not set in stone. So most of these fields from private information are from that create customer record. So these required fields that you had to fill out when you're adding a customer to the system will be auto-populated in here. These other fields that you see, like authorized to work in the USA, selective service compliant accommodations, priority status, these would not show right now because they are application questions. So this is where we want to get some feedback from you guys. And we kind of talked about this yesterday in the state session as well. So I wanted to get your thoughts too, is with this information, does it make sense to have it be editable? And does it make sense to be able to answer any of these questions early? So kind of how we talked up here, if you filled out something before you started an application, it would auto-populate into the application. And then the career planner would just verify that information is correct. And then if they have any documents that have to be uploaded to show like proof, for example, that authorized to work in the USA, could they upload it here and then just pull it to the application or vice versa? So right now this is view only. And then if we don't have questions answered, they wouldn't show. So if we didn't do these, you would only see these questions from the customer profile. But currently the way I have this working is there is an edit button. So if you wanted to edit private information and maybe, you know, you're talking to a customer and they brought in proof that they're authorized to work in the USA, but maybe they haven't started an actual application yet and you wanted to go ahead and collect it so they didn't come back, would you want to be able to do that here? Like when we go to edit private information, you see all this information and it would pull to that application if it is not certified. That is currently how IWDS works. So if we pop into, and I bet this will make me sign back in. Let's see here. So right now I'm on the customer. Yep. Okay. Let me sign back into IWDS test. Let's go to my customers. So, and I'll show this as an example. So for example, we have Blair here. If we go into Blair's private information on the customer menu, all of this is currently editable. I could go in and, you know, make changes. I could switch authorized to work in the US to no. We could say that, you know, we said, yes, they have a disability. I could change it to no, they don't have a disability. I can change date of birth. I can change everything. But when you save, oh well, let's change that back because it didn't like my, and we go into the actual application menu and we see Blair's got one application, she's a registrant. And then we go to private information under the application menu. We can see some of these, you know, like authorized to work in the USA, selective service compliance, those things that determine eligibility, even social security number, Hispanic, Latino, like we can't edit any of this. So that's kind of how I'm viewing this as well. So on the customer menu, you could edit these. So that's where, you know, maybe you entered an error or something happened and we need to change, you know, maybe right now they're not selective service compliant because they didn't register when they turned 18 and they're now 32, but they come back and give you a waiver and we can update that, things like that. But once that application is certified, when you go into that application menu, you can't edit any of that information. So that's the reason why we have these edit items here. I know more often than not, you're probably not going to edit, you know, Hispanic or Latino or race or disability, but you could if an error was made. And then on the flip side, you would have these questions that maybe if they haven't started an application yet, if you wanted to fill it out early, then it would just auto-populate into that application when you're editing this information. So then you can see here how they're all just fields, but when you go into there, then they kind of change to these questions. Is the customer authorized to work in the USA? Are they selective service compliant? Disability? Do they need accommodations? Thoughts on being able to make this editable, or would you prefer not to have this be editable and just be display only? And then the fields that would pull from the application wouldn't show until an application has been completed. I'm going to open the floor to thoughts on how you kind of envision this working. What would be the most beneficial for you all right now? Do you like the flexibility of being able to add things early if they haven't started an application and it could pull to the application and then the career planner verifies it's correct? Would you prefer to just wait until they do the application to do that stuff? Thoughts?
Are you saying, so I think you're saying is that when if you scroll up on your screen a little bit to the customer, so where it says Amy Air, yeah. So you're saying if we start to enter, just somebody comes into the center or whatever, we start to enter the customer information, that will automatically then start a profile
So they would have to actually do that create customer record. So,
Okay.
someone comes in and you are on the customer menu, you're like, okay, I don't think they're here. We add the customer, we do the duplicate customer check just to make sure they're not already in the system.
Sure.
And then you hit that add customer and you fill out this form. When you hit create customer, everything that's on this piece, they're automatically going to have a profile made for them when you hit this create customer, and all this information will be populated here.
Right. And then, but then when you scroll down to the profile, the private information, are you saying, are you asking if we want that to then start to auto-populate as soon as we start building the customer profile? Or, I mean, I
So
like
the pieces from the create customer record would populate. So date of birth, gender at birth, Hispanic or Latino, race, disability, those items that you've already answered would already pre-populate.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's what I thought you were saying. I didn't know if you meant.
But then you have these additional fields that are not on the create customer record, like authorized to work in the USA, the selective service compliance, priority status, social security number, pretend like that's not there right now because we have to have that conversation before. So yeah, pretend it's not there. But for these additional fields, these wouldn't be answered until they complete they start an application and they start going through that pre-screening. But do you like the idea of like this not showing until they've completed those questions on that pre-screening application? Or would you like the capability to be able to answer them early if they haven't started an application yet?
I like the idea of having the fields, there so that you can at least see whether or not someone, like if a new person is going to be completing or continuing with that customer's application or build. It's maybe not the first person that he or she met with at the center that started creating the customer profile. So then someone can say, oh, I wonder if this has been entered yet. So having the fields there, but then just having them like, if they haven't been answered yet, empty, and the ability to edit. I like that. But it does make sense either way, because the other way, like we've been saying, to the less, the less imposition, less burden on the job seeker, the customer, to have to provide more, anything more than what's really necessary just to utilize the center, the resource room, basically don't trouble them for all this documentation until it's absolutely needed, like for the application. So in that sense, it makes sense not to require or not to have to put those things in until the application is there. But I don't mind that those fields are there, and if we want to get a head start on it. But that's
and that's exactly how I was envisioning it. These would all be optional. If we kept them here and you could edit them, they would all be optional. You would by no means have to fill anything out on the profile information. You are just filling out this piece to create a customer record. But like you said, if maybe that person came in and they're using the resource room, but they went ahead and brought you proof that they're authorized to work in the USA, and you wanted to go ahead and collect it, instead of saying, okay, but if you come back and start this application, make sure you bring that back with you. So all of these would be optional. You would absolutely not have to do any of them. So if the customer is just coming in to use the resource room, they've never done an application, this would be blank, and there would probably be a message that would say like start an application, or, to view what have you. And then you would still be able to do those self-services, enter those self-services for the resource room, things like that. If they need help with resumes, they could still look at that. And then this would just have those items that you filled out on the create customer record. These other pieces would all just show like an A or B blank because they haven't been completed. And then you could get a start early if you wanted to, but by no means do you have to get a start early.
Yeah, I like the idea of optional, just because the way Career Connect works, there is no optional, so you have to do all of these things before you can move forward. So I like the idea of having it there and making it optional, not required until they bring the app, until they're doing the application.
And do you think that there will be any confusion if we come down to private information and we see these fields, even though they're empty, is a career planner going to see those and go, oh, we have to fill these out and click edit and do all this? Or do you think that they're not even really going to pay attention
Yeah, I think
to
once
this?
they learn that it's optional, they'll do what works best for them at that time. If they know it's now I'm going to say most of the time, if they know it's optional, they may not do it. They may not do it until the actual application, but some people do like to get ahead of get ahead. And if the customer's bringing stuff in, I think it's good to have the option.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
kind of where my mind went with that, is just providing that flexibility for the career planner. So if someone brought something in early and you're like, oh, hey, I can go ahead and answer this question and upload this piece of documentation, let's go ahead and do it. But if they go, you know what, let's wait until you do the application, like I said, whatever works best for the career planner. If any of these items are completed before they start an application, when they get to the application, those would be auto-populated. And then once again, the career planner would just have to verify, yes, is this correct? And if they did not bring documentation, when they were doing the profile, they would have to do that documentation on the application. So like I said, for my envisioning was just to make it flexible for the career planner and how they may want to work with something. And if someone brings something in early, to have the option to collect it then instead of waiting until they start the app. And then just as another reminder that if you updated any of this information after a application was certified, it would not update that certified application. So that would be like a static piece of information that would not update if you change anything on the profile.
Would it change in the customer info if you change
Yes.
if you went into the profile information screen versus, I mean, you could do it in the customer information screen too, but if you did it in the profile information screen, would it update the customer's information? Because that's how we always try to explain it because I know it gets confusing, especially when you have people that have applied sometimes in multiple LOEs, or they've applied a couple times and then, then they got a job and they didn't need our services and they come back, 6 or months or a year later. And it's like, well, we just always explain it to new, career planners that the customer information is that's kind of the most current, like this is where they are now, their address, all that stuff in the application, that's the snapshot that's captured when they were determined eligible to receive our services. So that's why that can't be changed. And the customer is like, if something's current in the new mailing address or something, yes, we can do that in the customer information. But
yes.
So yeah, having those two things separate is I think is good, because it'll, again, people familiar with how it's done in IWDS, it seems to be kind of following the same format.
Yeah, so that would be the exact same. So like you said, if someone moves and you want to update their address, you would have the most current address listed here, but the address that they had when they were certified on this application would still show on that application. Yeah, so that's exactly how it would work. And then veteran information would be similar. We're not going to really go into veteran information right now, and that is because we are kind of waiting until they get to the veterans piece on milestone B. So Lynette is doing weekly sessions with a small group of SMEs to kind of go through the application, what's required, what should be removed, things like that. So once Lynette gets to that veterans information and they make decisions on what questions and what fields should be under veterans, this will update. So technically, the only question that would show here would right now would be veteran status, because that is a field that they are required to fill out on the Create Customer Record. And then this piece would update once we get to that area in milestone B. But once we have those fields determined and they are put in here, it would work the same as private information. If they don't fill anything else out, then the only thing that's going to be here would be the veteran status. But once they do that application, then more fields would populate here, or if they do them early, then vice versa would work. And then the last piece under profile information is additional contacts. So this is where you're going to be able to add and edit additional contacts for your customer. So this is going to be a listing view of any additional contacts that you have in the system. Right now, I just have the list showing kind of your primary information. So the customer or the additional contact name, their relationship to the customer, and their phone number. Do note though that when you add or edit additional contacts, you do have that option to collect email address and then also their street, city, state, zip code, and then any comments for that contact as well. We kind of had this conversation before of, do we need to collect this information? And it kind of sounds like based off of that session that Lynette's doing, that they still would like to collect this information as optional, but we wouldn't make it required. And I think that's how it works in IWDS right now as well. So you would always be able to click. If you, for some reason, needed to look at John Hare's address, you could click the hyperlink and it would pull up a view of John Hare's information. That would basically have all of this filled out. So if you needed John Hare's email address or his actual address, you could view that from the edit view. And then that gives you the option to edit the contact. And then we would also have the option to delete an additional contact. So if Amy Hare gets divorced from John Hare and she says, I don't want John as an additional contact anymore, you can hop in here and delete it out so that you don't accidentally contact John for some reason when Amy doesn't want you to. Are there any thoughts on additional contacts? Is there anything that you use it for that you think, you would like to show it right here on this screen? Is there anything that we should be collecting that we're not currently collecting? How do you guys kind of use the additional contacts right now?
Yeah, I think just as you described, and leaving it on the front page is actually good because sometimes you have to go deep into the application to get the additional contacts. And like you said, people are just using the phone number and the email. I think what you have here is fine.
Okay. On this listing view, would you want me to add another column so the email's quick and easy for you to access as well?
Yeah, if that's available, that's an
Ooh, yeah,
option,
that's-
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
agreed.
Oh yeah, that'd be super easy to do.
yeah, we can do that. That's a good catch. Yeah, it's a good idea.
I'm
And of
actually,
course,
I'm actually glad to see that the additional contacts actually shows up there because you're right. And going into it in IWDS, because it is optional, you have to go looking for it to find it. And there are newer career planners who forget that it's there. And there have been many times when we were trying to do some follow-up with somebody who we really need those additional contacts. And when they're optional, they're not there. But just putting it on the screen here reminds
Saves you a
them.
few
Yeah.
clicks. Yeah.
yeah, it gives you that visual reminder like, oh, hey, we need to collect this. Yeah, okay. So then we've got that option here down at the bottom so that you can, like I said, see a listing. So if they have multiple additional contacts, they would all show in this list. You would have a quick and easy way to add a new additional contact. You have a quick and easy way to edit that contact by clicking on the hyperlinked name. And if for some reason we need to remove an additional contact, we could also do that delete option. And then Al did put in the chat here, we could make the email as a mail link. So it pulls up to a mail app and pulls that info into the to field automatically. And so if you just need to do a quick email, you could just click the email. And like I said, it would pull up that email app. So yeah, I think that would be a cool idea too. All right. So that is the customer profile. Is there anything you guys think is missing, especially under profile information? Is there anything that I don't have here, like private information, veterans information, additional contacts? Is there anything that I don't have that you'd like to see in a customer profile? Or do you think that these items make sense here? Do keep in mind that your other items like the credential list, employment history, education history, we are viewing that right now to be under career tools, and it would be a similar setup to this is kind of how I'm envisioning it, where you'd have like employment history and then you'd have all of that education summary or whatever we would call it and have it all listed. Do you think it makes sense to have those kind of separated? Anything that you're missing, any wish list items from the profile that you'd like to see added? anything at all.
It's hard
Don't
to say.
everybody speak at once. Yeah.
I defer to everybody else. I mean, to me, it looks good. I mean, there's always that. It's it's that thing of now 20 years later from IWDS, like now there's so many more capabilities. It's almost like it'd be cool to have stuff because we can do it. But then again, if the screen gets, if this page gets too
Huge.
crowded, then you're scrolling. So I think personally, I think it's a good balance of having stuff that you would need. That's and I think like Lori and Crystal Chrissy mentioned, like it's convenient because things that you the likelihood of needing something kind of right away instead of clicking a few more times to go further in an application. Those things seem to be right here. The things that you were more likely to want to be able to pull up right away. So I think it's a good balance of having it conveniently on one screen. But if we start putting, I mean, you have a few more fields like oh, could we put the something under private information? Like that's fine. I'm just saying, as far as like the sections that you have here, the categories of stuff, I think it's a pretty good balance before you start. Like I said, I'm always tempted to like, well, if we could have that work history right there, then we could, because we can have it convenient right there. But then then you get to that risk of like, well, is it going to be kind of overcrowded, and then you're scrolling down and then you may miss something because you have to keep scrolling down to see it. So I think it's a good balance, but as always, I defer to everybody else that uses the case management side of things more frequently than I do nowadays.
And yeah, that's kind of, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that I agree with that, because in all of our terminology, we think of a profile as a snapshot of the person, which anybody from the very frontline receptionist to the career planner is going to, or even somebody who's processing exit or whatever, you're trying to get the right person and the stuff about that right person so you can contact them if you need to. Whereas educational stuff, credentials, career stuff, all of that is something that you use when you're working with them, because there's a reason why you're working with them. And that's not necessarily something that everybody needs to be privy to right at the offset. That's what
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And like I said, that's why we kind of just kept it small here, that snapshot. And then if you needed to see that employment history or the education summary, that's when you pop over to the career tools, and then that's all listed there as well. So it'd be kind of like a snapshot similar to this, but on the career side.
Yeah, I agree. And see, now Career Connect, some of the stuff we don't use because we have too much stuff, or it's a lot of stuff. So this to me is perfect because it's just a little, like you said, a snapshot of what's needed at the moment. It just gives you a quick overview and it's not too overwhelming. So I like it.
Awesome. Yeah, and like I said, that's also why we have this quick links participant summary tools on the left-hand side. So instead of like creating a whole piece that says referrals, instead of making this super long, you just click on referrals and it takes you to that page instead of having it be a section here. Mark, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to say, from Christy's comment, where sometimes there's things that are never used. I think as we go through this, I think those need to be pointed out. The work you're doing and that you're gaining from all of us, especially local areas, to make sure we add what we need and add some additional stuff if we need it, goes the other way too. If there's things that aren't needed that are currently in a system, I think you all would want to know that and not include them. There's no reason programming something if it's not going to be used.
Yeah, you do make a really good point. I'm not very familiar with Career Connect, but yeah, if there's anything in here that you're like, oh man, we don't really need that, we definitely want to know so that we can remove it. We don't want to just make an updated version of IWDS. We want it to be completely user-friendly and be able to have those things that you need and get rid of those things that you don't need or use.
That's what I was going to say. I don't think Lisa's on the call, but I know she's made that comment that we aren't trying to recreate IWDS with a different cover. We're trying to create something new and utilizing IWDS as kind of a point of reference only.
Yeah, kind of like this is how it's currently being used, but how can we update it, or can we change it? Do we need it, kind of thing? It's just a point of reference.
Yeah, and I just
Sure.
want to say Career Connect, we're like us in Cook County, we're not using it to the full extent. So there are lots of things that we have access to that it just, yeah, whatever, it just comes with, I don't know how to describe it, just comes with the system or comes, that's how, they can't take stuff away or they can't add stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
so this is like a really good opportunity to like kind of combine both. Like this really works really well in Career Connect. So, and incorporate it vice versa or whatever. But I think this is, to me, this is perfect because it's just short and succinct. Like some things that we do have to do in Career Connect are unnecessary. And it's just because that's the way it's designed. For other for other states, they use it as their whole state system. So like we can't take certain things away because that's just how they, that's how their product is, I guess. So, but I think this is really good and I really like that we're going through each, like, I know it probably seems tedious, but having been through it during Career Connect and asking, can we do this? Can we do that? It's really is very helpful. And sometimes it doesn't really make sense until you're actually seeing it like this. So this is very helpful.
Yeah, and on our end, I don't think we see it as tedious because you've got me and Al and Lynette and Danny and Olivia when she comes back, all working on different pieces. So for us, it's really, we want to get that information because we've got 5 different BAs working on different things. So we want to make sure we're collecting all of that information and kind of, very rarely do you get to see a system be built from the ground up. So this is the perfect time for you to be asking those questions. Can we add this? Can we not add this? It might be yeah, that's a great idea, but it may not be in the MVP, but we can make a note to maybe add it in V2 or V3. But this is the time for you guys to make those comments when we're showing all of this, because we want to make sure that this is being built for, at the end of the day, you guys are the ones that are going to be using this. We don't want to build you something that you're going to hate using, and then you're going to go back to doing your paper applications and then just using this as kind of a data collection tool. So yeah, I think with this page, I'm going to make those updates, especially on the application summary piece that we kind of talked about. Like I said, this screen here will be a little bit updated once we get to that application piece a little bit more, and then we'll update to make sure that the email's listed here. Otherwise, any other thoughts, questions, anything anybody wants to talk about? That's all I had today. I'm not sure if
Yeah, I don't have,
Lynette, Al, or
I don't have
Danny had
anything.
anything.
No, Taylor, I don't have anything for today.
Perfect.
I don't know if Lynette does or not either.
I was
don't-
just curious over on you said that the grayed out area is going to be static, right? And that the center part is going to scroll and the other parts going to stay. Okay. So under the participant summary tools box there, I see that everything is listed. It's in alphabetical order, which is fine. Is there any conversation behind the scenes about putting the most used needed item at the top of the list instead of keeping it all in alphabetical order?
Yeah, so that's definitely something we could discuss. I just put it in alphabetical order because I didn't know. But if there's a different order or something that you would like to see it in, we can definitely rearrange that easy peasy. So if you don't need generate swipe card, maybe you want to put that at the bottom. We can move, yeah.
Because I'm just thinking if we're talking about customer profile and that snapshot idea of first line anybody, the most used thing probably would be case notes. I mean, that's the most, because even if somebody's just walking in the front door and they're like, I just want to use the resource room, we're hoping somebody's going to capture that and put it in a case note showing why they were there. Whereas assessments, that's into the weeds, somebody later on, you're not doing those unless you're working with them. It's not really a profile thing. I mean, I understand having it access.
Yeah, and we could definitely remove it too. And assessments could be just under career tools.
Because I'm just thinking about every place that has like receptionists and so forth that are collecting initial information. Like there are no times when our receptionist people are looking like at assessments or needing to deal with those or anything like that. Like that's something that's buried. And I don't know that I necessarily would want everybody to have access to that right from the splash page. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to keep
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
trying to
And that
make
was
it
kind of
easy.
our thoughts
Like-
here would be, this would be really what your front desk person would be using. Because, you know, if they don't have authorization to maybe see all of this detail and they maybe only can see some select items, we still want to be able to have them be able to enter case notes, you know,
Right.
upload things like that. So yeah, we could definitely remove assessments from here. And it would be something that you would only find under career tools, like when you're actually going in and working with that customer.
I mean,
So
that's the biggest thing that I saw about that. I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts, but it kind of bothers me that it's there because I don't know that I want everybody to be looking at that.
Yeah, we could definitely
I-
pop that out
I
if we
thought-
chose to do so.
Yeah, I thought something, excuse me, sorry about that. I thought something similar, just like, like the order of maybe mostly used at the top, but I guess I was thinking of it from, and I wasn't thinking of like necessarily eliminating anything because I thought, again, this is my, I'm got the IWDS framework or lenses. I was thinking, but it sounds like I was under it's a misconception that this, so the grayed out areas, on the side, that's the menu for every, how in IWDS you always have that same, which for IWDS it's convenient. I mean, everything's right to the left. You can always go back and and go to another section of IWDS. But I was thinking like in IWDS, how that blue section is the menu's pretty much always this. It's always the same. So I was thinking, I mean, it does change and expand on different screens, technically, yes. But so I'm sorry, I was thinking. So are you saying?
That's how I'm envisioning it as well, is like this would the only thing that would change on this gray piece would really be like this navigation.
Oh, okay.
So like
'Cause
if
in
you're
that
in
case,
career
maybe you do
tools,
want to
then
leave them there, just put them further down. But if this is a menu that's only when you're in the customer information screen or something, then like what I mean? Like if the menu to the left where your cursor is right now, this menu in this grade section, if those links, if that menu, if you could get a different menu depending on which tab you're in, then yeah, you could eliminate things that you're not going to need while you're in the customer profile tab. But if that's going to be a full menu that's always there, for every screen that you're in, for a quick access standpoint, maybe reordering them, but maybe not removing them. But if it is just for a customer profile, then like Crystal said, like then if it's not needed, maybe just get rid of it. But that's why I wasn't sure of like if you're envisioning this menu to be like similar to IWDS, where you'll always kind of have this menu on the left for quickly going to different screens, or if it's only in that tab, like what I'm saying, does each tab have its own different and there could be overlap, or some things are on all the tabs, but does each tab, customer profile, intake, review, career tools, will each tab kind of have its own customized menu of links to screens that you would use specifically in that tab? I guess was my question. I'm not articulating it very well. I'm sorry. It's hard to, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right.
Julia made a good point in the chat about having, like, maybe it only appears in the summary tools depending on your level of account privilege, like your role. So a front desk person, if they don't have access to assessments, maybe when they're logged in, it wouldn't even show here. But if the career planner is logged in, maybe it would show here because maybe they want a quick and easy way to access assessments because they are deep in with that customer. So that is something we could discuss as well. Or we could also just make this more customizable. So maybe there's always going to be participant summary tools. And, the big ones, case notes, uploads, anything that we think needs to be on every screen could be here. But maybe when we switch to career tools, like assessments pops up or referrals, maybe that's not a good example, but maybe the links change depending on which screen you're on. But the big ones would always be the most used ones would always be at the top.
And the reason why I like that idea better because in IWDS currently, the only way that you can really get, I guess, all up in somebody's business as far as assessments goes is if you know enough to go into the assessment summary and really look at the narratives to see what's going on with that person. But But that is a, you know, a more recent requirement for people to use it. And so the frontline people who are just taking questionnaires or whatever don't really know that it's there anyway, so they're not into it. I have a problem with it, with the assessments showing on the initial splash page that has the customer information and the profile and all of that. It definitely, case notes needs to be at the top, I think. But if you could solve that problem by simply not having it be accessible depending on the role of the user, that would probably be a best case scenario.
Yeah, so we could either definitely do it by role, or like I said, maybe just fully customize it. And we could honestly kind of do both. But it's like, you know, when you're on, like I said, if you switch to career tools, the participant summary tools may change. So instead of having to dig through something, but yeah, we could look into both options. With that though, taking assessments out of there, what do you think would be most priority? Case notes at the top. What do you think would be under case notes that you would use the most, or a front desk person would use the most? And do keep in mind that self-services and information-only services, that's where you're going to enter all of those self-services. So if they're using the resource room and things like that, that'll be entered there. We've got your uploads. And then, like I said, generate swipe card or whatever that might change to. And then we've got the referrals and resumes. Any thoughts on the ordering of this?
I mean, I haven't thought about it very much, but I think that, you know, if I was going to on the fly, I would probably do case notes first and then self-services and then referrals.
Referrals, yeah, I was going to say, because when people come in, like, and I agree with what you're saying about the assessments tab too, Crystal. I wasn't trying to advocate for not getting rid of it. I was just saying if this is the only menu we're going to have, then maybe,
Right.
or at least put it in another tab. So, but
Yeah.
because somebody comes in for the first time, or just, you know, a casual user of the center just for their own job search resources, then, you know, you're more likely to maybe make a referral, like if they need to file for employment or want to get hooked up with job or something. So the three that you just mentioned in that order, again, can't speak for everybody. I'll you know, frontline staff across the state, but those that's the three that I would have thought of on the fly as well.
Perfect. And then Mark, I saw you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just, sorry. I was gonna say, I think we've talked about like doing analysis once this is all up and running. I know you do that on some of the workNet pages already, but I think that list could be updated based on just, you know, every quarter or halfway through a year or something, just seeing what's being used more, you know, more regularly and creating the list, you know, revising the list to reflect that. So if, you know, if we set up a list as it was discussed today, but then we find out that maybe the third thing on that list is being used more than anything else, can't you do a, like, I guess what they call it, a hits list to show how many times each thing's being clicked?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so I just think that's part of an assessment of the new 2.0 is to regularly see what's being used and what's not being used. And I think that relates to a lot of areas, services and things like that. You know, if we have a list of services and some of them aren't being used, we need to find out why not. And is it a matter of not informing them, not knowing what they mean, choosing something else instead, or whatever? So that'd be appreciated to be able to do that and look at those things.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We'll definitely make a note of that. So just, yeah, on the fly, we'll update this based off of those top 3 items. And then I'll do some more digging on, does it make more sense to have this show by role? Or does it make more sense to have it change depending on which tab you're on, or a combination of the two? So we'll kind of do some more research on that. Any other thoughts or questions about our customer profile? We are almost at time today. All right. Thank you all for sitting through that with us. Gave us some really good feedback. I'm really excited to get started on this customer profile. And this will continue to kind of build out, and you'll see some similarities when we get further on the application piece as well that Lynette is currently working on. So profile and application really kind of go hand in hand, and we're excited to see where it goes.
Thanks.
Otherwise, we will give you 8 minutes back today.